Imagine spending hours creating what you believe is the perfect digital campaign. The words are clever. The photograph looks great. The call to action is strong. Your message performs beautifully with your usual audience. So you decide to take it into a new international market. Then something unexpected happens. People don't respond. Or worse, they respond negatively. The humor doesn't translate. An image carries a meaning you never intended. A familiar expression confuses people. A color you chose because it looked attractive carries a different cultural association. And perhaps a call to action feels too aggressive. Now, nothing changed in your intentions, but everything changed in the context. And that gives us today's digital marketing secrets question. When our digital messages can cross the world in seconds, are we culturally aware enough to understand what happens when they arrive? Welcome to Digital Marketing Secrets, folks. This is where we explore adaptive leadership and practical ways to communicate, market, and build relationships responsibly in an increasingly digital world. I'm Richard Fontenay, and this week, throughout the FMelearning context, we're exploring cultural awareness. Our leadership campaign, Working Across Cultures, a survival guide, introduced the principle cultural awareness begins when we become curious enough to understand before expecting to be understood. On the listening heart, we move from awareness toward encounter with every nation, one spirit, the call to unity in a divided world. Then, coaching talks turned awareness into performance leadership through cross-cultural competence, working effectively in diverse environments. And now we take that journey online. And here, cultural awareness becomes especially important. Because the internet has given almost every entrepreneur, small business, organization, and content creators something that once belonged mainly to large corporations: global reach. But global reach brings global responsibility. The internet has no cultural border guard. So when you publish something online, you can't completely control who sees it. A Facebook post written in Regina can appear on a screen in London. A YouTube video produced in Canada can be watched in India, Nigeria, Australia, the Philippines, or Brazil. A Pinterest graphic can travel far beyond the audience you originally imagined. And a website can be discovered anywhere search engines operate. Now that's remarkable, but it creates an important distinction. Global reach does not automatically create global understanding. Technology can carry the message, but it can't guarantee that people will interpret it the way you intended. Words, images, symbols, humor, gestures, colors, values, and calls to action can all be interpreted differently across communities. And that's why cultural awareness and digital marketing begins before we press publish. Now, one of the easiest digital marketing mistakes is to say, my audience is everyone. Well, it isn't. Even global brands segment their audiences because people have different needs, expectations, languages, buying behaviors, and cultural contexts. For the small business owner or digital entrepreneur, this also matters. Suppose you sell an online course. You might assume that because the course is delivered digitally, the same landing page will work equally well across all markets. But potential customers may respond differently regarding their understanding, family benefits, community impacts, authority, testimonials, urgency, risks, price, and guarantees. Even the idea of personal success may be framed differently. Therefore, effective cross-cultural marketing starts with a familiar principle. Know whom you're talking to, not as a demographic statistic, but as people. I've come to understand that translation is really not localization. Let's say you're entering a market where another language is widely spoken. You translate your website. The job is done, but not necessarily. Translation asks, what do these words mean in another language? Localization asks, how should this entire experience work within another cultural context? And that's a much larger question. A translated headline may be grammatically correct, but sound awkward. An idiom may have no equivalent. A joke may lose its humor completely. A photograph may feel unfamiliar or inappropriate. A testimonial that builds trust in one community may be less persuasive in another. Even formatting, dates, measurements, currencies, and forms of address can affect the user experience. Localization, therefore, moves beyond words, and it considers context. Now let's look at humor as a problem. Humor deserves special attention. Humor can make digital content warm, memorable, and human. Now, we use a weekly smile in our newsletter because sometimes a little lightness helps us learn. But humor is deeply contextual. Sarcasm may be obvious to one audience and taken literally by another. Wordplay may disappear in translation. A cultural reference that makes one group laugh may mean nothing to another. A joke considered harmless in one setting may feel disrespectful somewhere else. Does that mean global marketers should never use humor? Not really. It means we should use it with awareness. Before using humor across culture, ask, does the joke depend on shared cultural knowledge? Could the humor be interpreted as mocking a person or a community? Would the meaning survive translation? Sometimes the best global humor is the simplest. So make it human, gentle, and never dependent on putting another group down. Now think about the images you use, such as stock photographs, icons, hand gestures, clothing, family scenes, workplace settings, religious symbols, maps, flags, food, and colors. Images communicate instantly, often before anyone reads your headline. But visual meaning is not universal. A gesture that seems friendly in one place may carry a different meaning elsewhere. An image intended to represent a typical family may intentionally convey a narrow assumption about family life. A business photograph may depict leadership in a way that does not resonate with another audience. Culturally aware marketing asks, who is represented? Who is absent? What assumptions does this image make? And perhaps most importantly, how might someone outside my own cultural experience interpret what they see? Now let's look at this from our mantra, business, work, and life. In business, we may have a global reach, but only a local understanding. Imagine a Canadian company that's beginning to receive website traffic from another country. The temptation is to immediately increase advertising. A culturally aware business pauses first. Where is the traffic coming from? What are visitors looking for? Which pages interest them? What language do they prefer? Are they abandoning the purchasing process at a particular stage? And do pricing, payment methods, shipping, or customer support expectations differ? The business doesn't simply ask, how do we sell more? It asks, what do we need to understand before we serve this audience well? And that's adaptive leadership. Learn before scaling. Now, let's look at work from a global digital team. Cultural awareness also matters behind the marketing. Many digital businesses now work with freelancers, virtual assistants, designers, developers, writers, and contractors located around the world. In real terms, you may never meet them face to face. And that means much of the relationship depends on written digital communication. However, written communication removes many of the cues we rely on in person. Tone becomes harder to interpret. A short email may seem efficient to one person and abrupt to another. Silence may mean disagreement, confusion, respect, or simply a different working schedule. Cross-cultural leadership, therefore, requires clarity. So, explain expectations, confirm understanding, avoid unnecessary slang, be careful with humor, and don't assume that ASAP means the same thing to everyone. And in life, your personal brand travels too. Cultural awareness online isn't only a business issue. Every one of us leaves a digital trail, such as comments, photographs, posts, videos, shares, reactions. Even if we don't consider ourselves marketers, we communicate something about who we are. And sometimes people encounter us without the context that our friends or local community would naturally understand. That's worth remembering before posting. So ask, could someone reasonably interpret this differently from what I intend? Now, that doesn't mean becoming afraid to communicate. It means communicating thoughtfully. And there is another trap we need to avoid. Once marketers begin learning about cultural differences, they can fall into stereotyping. We could say, without intending to, people in this country prefer. This culture always responds to. That generation wants. But real communities are more complex. Countries contain regional differences. Generations overlap. People move between cultures, and individuals differ. Cultural research should spark curiosity, but not create new boxes. The goal is not to develop a formula for manipulating a cultural group. The goal is to understand people well enough to communicate with greater relevance and respect. Lately, I've been thinking that digital technology has made communication easier than at any time in my working life. But easier communication doesn't necessarily mean better communication. We can send a message around the world almost instantly. The difficult part remains the same as it has always been. Will another human being understand what we mean? Technology solves distance, but it doesn't automatically solve misunderstanding. That's why I believe cultural awareness is integral to adaptive leadership. The effective digital leader doesn't simply ask, "Can this message reach people?" And the leader also asks, "How might people receive it?" And the second question changes everything. So far, we've established an important principle. Digital communication may be global, but meaning remains cultural. Our words matter, our images matter, our humor matters, and our associations matter as well. And our audience deserves more than a message copied from one community and dropped unchanged into another one. In part 2, we'll turn cultural awareness into practical digital marketing process. We'll explore how to research before reaching, localize rather than merely translate, audit words and images, test content with people who understand the intended audience, make calls to action culturally appropriate, use technology and AI without outsourcing cultural judgment, and recover responsibly when a digital message gets it wrong. We'll also stop and develop a simple cross-cultural digital checklist and bring the episode together through our learning lens and look ahead to next week's journey into inclusion and accessible digital promotions. Because reaching a global audience is no longer the difficult part. The deeper challenge is this: can we reach people across cultures without losing respect, meaning, or humanity along the way? Now let's stop for a coffee or a beverage of your choice. Now, while on your break, open your website, Facebook page, LinkedIn profile, YouTube channel, or another place where you communicate online. Now imagine someone from a very different cultural background discovering it for the first time. And ask yourself, what would they learn about me from what they see? Would they feel welcomed? Would they understand the language? Would the examples make sense? Would they see only people who look alike? Would the humor travel? Would the assumptions be obvious? And perhaps the most interesting question, when am I communicating that I don't realize that I'm actually communicating? Now that's worth considering over a cup of coffee, because our digital presence often says more than the words we deliberately write. Now, I'm Richard Fontenay, signing off for now, and don't forget to come back for part 2.